and welcome to Represent NYC on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. This is our virtual show today. My name is Victoria Burt. I'm actually the producer of the show here, and we're joined with City Council Member Member Kallos, who represents District 5 here in New York City, which is the Upper East Side, El Barrio, Midtown East, East Harlem.
Roosevelt Island, too.
Roosevelt
about 168,000 people in the district, but I have a responsibility to everyone in New York City.
Yes, of course you do. I know you well, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Yes. So just tell me first what it's been like for you as a city council member since the pandemic started.
Let me just share what it's been like as a New Yorker.
Okay.
All of us, I think, are trapped in very tiny apartments. I'm in a one-bedroom with my wife and daughter. Folks might overhear her. You might even be able to see her toys. She kind of owns the living room. And so I think a lot of us has felt a lot of stress trying to cram a lot of folks into apartments that might not be big enough for us on a good day, and certainly aren't big enough in this case. As a council member, I generally start my days at 6 a.m. trying to respond to emails, trying to respond to constituents, and my days usually don't end until 10 p.m. anyway. I think the difference is that I'm spending a lot more time on web conferences and video conferences and phone conferences and phone calls, and just trying to do everything we can to help every single person during this pandemic. And I think just folks who are feeling symptoms, if you are feeling mild symptoms, it is true you don't need to get tested. But for those of you out there who are feeling sick, sicker than you've ever been before, having difficulty breathing, please don't wait till it's too late. Please contact your healthcare provider, see what they can do. There's great options in terms of telemedicine nowadays. That's what I've been using recently. And make sure you get the care you need. I personally am working to make sure we get enough tests for everyone, making sure we have enough beds for everybody, and making sure we have enough PPEs for everybody. So I think that's where elected officials can be leading right now.
Now, you represent what's called the hospital corridor in New York City, correct?
That's correct.
So I just saw that a report that came out from the former commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, that said that New York City's hospitals are nearing capacity during the influx. How are you guys managing that? How is that being managed?
I have spent every waking moment, 6 a.m. to 10 or midnight, every single day since this has been declared a pandemic, touching base with institutions, hospitals, hotels, anyone who will take my call from here to China and back. And I'm really proud to say we have results already. We're working very closely with Mayor de Blasio to get 350 beds online on Roosevelt Island. We've got 100 beds that should go online this week, another 250 beds next week. We reached out to Hospital for Special Surgery. They're the best orthopedic hospital on the planet, bar none. It's where a lot of professional athletes go. When we stopped doing elective surgeries, a lot of the joint surgeries were considered elective in that folks could wait until the pandemic was over to get the treatment. And they've got about 200 beds. They're going to be working with New York Presbyterian, which has an emergency room in my district that is pretty much the hospital folks go to. And so at this point, we're up to about 550 new beds. When they talk about converting Javits Center, they're talking about 1,000 beds. So we've been able to get about half the capacity of Javits just in my district. If somebody's watching at home, they can email coronavirus@benkallos.com, and we will work with you to get more beds.
Your district also has a large number of seniors. How have you been dealing with, sort of the reaction and the impact that it can have on that community?
Well, I think anyone watching needs to be very familiar with Matilda's law that is saying that if you are older, you should stay home, and that we in my office have been doing everything we can to support folks while they're staying home. And so we're working with Stanley Isaac's Neighborhood Center, which has a senior center built in, and a lot of the senior centers in the neighborhood, if you live on the east side, or even if you don't Our senior centers, I think, are some of the best in the city. They offer 3 square meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in this time where it's actually not safe for seniors to all congregate without that social distance, and where it's also unsafe for seniors to have to wait in line to pick up the food, we've partnered with Stanley Isaac's Neighborhood Center, Meals on Wheels, and our other senior centers to get food delivered to people's homes. We were actually partnering with WPIX to get volunteers for folks who feel that they aren't a senior, where they aren't immunocompromised, and where they feel that they can safely pick up the food without having social contact, without breaking that 6-foot rule, wearing gloves, take it to somebody's house, leave it outside their door so that folks can pick it up without having to worry about exposure, and again, people who aren't experiencing any symptoms. So we are doing a lot of partnerships with the senior centers and other food-based programs in the district and in the city to make sure that seniors have access to the food that they need.
You recently wrote an op-ed about the impact that this has had on the small businesses. I mean, this is devastating to them. Tell me a little bit about your plan and what you're thinking.
We've been getting a lot of outreach from small businesses. The big question we've been getting is whether or not they're considered an essential business. Because as far as I can tell, whether you're a small business operator or employee, everyone's preference is to continue going to work, continue to have income, and not have to get any sort of bailout. And I want to thank those folks. We also wrote an op-ed just thanking all the people who are going to work day in, day out, everyone from our healthcare providers and our emergency providers to the building service workers that make the Upper East Side, and the people who are in the grocery stores. We're not experiencing food shortages. The grocery stores are still open, and some of these people are making $15 an hour with no benefits, and they're risking their lives, their family lives, to take care of folks. In terms of the small businesses, I'm really looking forward to what we see from the federal government. The first bill that came down is going to expand unemployment benefits. In fact, right now, if you lost your job, you can get unemployment benefits immediately. Usually you have to wait about a week. Mm-hmm. And so we also saw that the federal government started giving banks 0% interest, and that was in order to restart the economy. But one of the concerns that we had is just, we need a lot more compassion here, and we need people who are getting something to give something to. So the thought was that if you're a very large bank, or any bank that's getting the 0% interest, then maybe you should go to all the people who are holding your mortgages and say, you know what, you can defer this just like your student loans. But if those landlords take them up on that, they should go to the tenants, the small business owners, residents like you and me who may not be able to afford this month's rent because they may have lost their job, to say, you know what, they don't have to pay either. And in exchange for that, the small business that isn't going to have to pay rent would have to say to their employees, you know what, because I'm not paying rent, I have some extra money to cover some of your costs. Or at the very least, if they still can't manage and they do need to lay people off, they would have to lay people off and say, you know what, you may be laid off, but as soon as this is over, as soon as folks are allowed to come into work again, you will have a job. And if they do that, they would get taken care of. And that way we're able to help everyone in the economy, from the people working at the small businesses to the small business people themselves, to the landlords, to the banks. Far too often it seems like the only people who get the bailouts are the big banks. And I do want to thank Teresa Garaducci at the New School. She's an economist there who helped us figure out the numbers and make sure that this was economically sound and would work.
I want to touch on something else that you just said about the rents. Where does it stand right now as far as, like, April 1st is coming up, people are going to be expected to pay, their rents for their apartment. Has there been any movement on whether or not that's going to be suspended, or?
So I'm advocating for the fact that if somebody is getting some sort of bailout or assistance from the government, they shouldn't be trying to collect rent from people. That being said...
The landlord, meaning like the landlord, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That being said, in the state of New York, Governor Cuomo has put out an order that there will be no evictions, whether from residential or commercial, for the next 90 days. And as far as those types of situations tend to work, with that eviction protection, it will incentivize the landlords to work with tenants on payment plans. Anyone who's ever been through the landlord-tenant court situation knows that generally all the court is looking to do is get the landlord paid.
Right. So I have another question about closing of the parks. I heard that there was some discussion that they might be closing the city parks. Where does that stand? Do you have any updates that you can share with us about that?
We recently received signage from the Department of Parks and Recreation asking folks who are entering our parks to practice social distancing, putting them on notice that the equipment is not being cleaned regularly and that people need to be cautious when they touch the equipment. I'll just be very honest here. I share a lot of the same frustration that Governor Cuomo does. I have a daughter. We're cooped up in a very small apartment. Yeah. When we try to go to the parks, it's very hard to get social distance. The children are not respecting it. I'm hoping that if there's a viewer who's a parent whose child says, oh, I'm going to go hang out with so-and-so at the park, the answer is no. Children are getting coronavirus, and when I see a group of 6 to 10, sometimes 20 kids hanging out in a park together like it's a snow day, that gives me a lot of pause, a lot of concern. I think that residents just need to practice the social distancing. If folks are on the parks, bring some wipes to make sure that if your kid is touching equipment, they do so. Bring that hand sanitizer. If you're out of hand sanitizer, just soap works. That's how you minimize your exposure, minimize your risk, and how we flatten the curve.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what have been some of the obstacles that you've seen to the response.
I think we've been very blessed in my community. We reached out to folks to say, can we get more tests online? I have the best medical institutions on the planet in my districts. We're working on getting the testing online. We need places to administer the tests. I have relationships in the private sector, and I've used those relationships to see if we can have places, possibly more than 100 different locations, to get testing online ASAP. We need beds. We have 350 on Roosevelt Island. We have another 200, so we've been able to get those. We've reached out to hotel operators to make sure that we have space for people who need treatment, as well as those providing the treatment, so that they're not putting themselves at risk. And we have great partnerships, and we need to support our hotels in this time. If you're watching this and you're at an institution that's looking for hotels, email coronavirus@benkallos.com, and we will be on it. And last but not least, when it comes to PPEs, particularly the 3M N95 masks. If you have them, please let us know. As you can tell, I've been taking this time to not necessarily shave, so I'm not going to be wearing them because we really need it for our first responders, our healthcare providers, those on the front lines. And so we've been working with folks to either get them donated to hospitals in the neighborhood, and we've got a lot of those on the line, and we want to thank all the heroes who have been doing so selflessly. And literally, I'm in daily negotiations with people in New York City, Florida, Colorado, China, just trying to source as many N95 masks as I can to bring them here. And also, we're working with volunteers, whether it's in Broadway, or I am a sci-fi fan, I'm an anime fan. We recently just launched a partnership with Anime NYC for cosplayers who are used to making costumes to start helping out with the effort.
Oh, that's great.
Whatever it is, we want to be there and help people get what they need.
So in this just final few moments, just talk to me about something that might have come out of the district and what you've been dealing with that's really positive, or if there's any advice for regular New Yorkers other than just stay home.
That's a really good question. I think for me, I just want to say to everyone, the key thing here is that I want everyone watching to know that they are empowered to have a role in saving everyone else in our city, that we're really in this together, and that those who are going to volunteer to deliver food, let's just make sure you do it safely. But otherwise, it is important for folks to stay home. It is important to respect the social distancing. If you live in a high-rise building like I do with elevators, it's okay to ask somebody before you get on, do you want me to get on or do you want me to wait for the next elevator? It really is on all of us. So if you're in the park, practice that social distancing. If you're in the supermarket, wait 6 feet away from the person in front of you. And the person behind you, if they crowd you, just very politely say, hey, trying to be a good example, trying to engage in social distancing, do you mind giving me that space? And what I will say is, I think one of the most amazing pieces is just all the employers who have adapted and are letting their people work from home, all the people who are giving each other social distance, the neighbors who are doing shopping for the seniors who are afraid to leave. It's just, we have a great community. We're happy to facilitate. I want to thank you for stepping in and helping with hosting duties. And I want to thank all the viewers. And if there's anything we can do, they can always email me, coronavirus@benkallos.com. And after the pandemic, feel free to email me, bkallos@benkallos.com. We've got a lot of resources at benkallos.com. We're sending out a very thoughtful newsletters every time we have real updates, everything from when the governor announced the New York on Pause Act to when the city went remote learning for students. So if you want to be in the know, you can visit benkallos.com/subscribe, and thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much for doing this. And anytime you want to talk to your constituents or New Yorkers, let me know. We'll be here. MNN is really about trying to get the representatives connected to the people, and we're committed to that. And thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Represent NYC. Hi, welcome to Represent NYC on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I'm Victoria Burt. I'm the producer of this show, and we're doing another virtual show. I'm actually here in my living room because we are working from home, and we are responding positively as we can to this pandemic in New York City and around the country. And I wanted to introduce you guys to somebody. I did a blog the other day on how we can help, because I think we're all feeling a little powerless. And one way we can help is to work with food banks and people who to help people who need to get food to them directly. And I have with me here today Beth Shapiro, who's the executive director of Citymeals on Wheels, an organization that's been around New York City for, I think, 40 years, even more. Beth, hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Victoria. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So tell me what you're seeing on the ground. What's going on?
We are getting meals out to homebound elderly New Yorkers who need them, and that's Citymeals' mission. We are here to deliver weekend, holiday, and emergency meals to older New Yorkers too frail on a regular day to get out and shop and cook for themselves. So we, in a typical year, last year we delivered over 2 million meals to 18,000 homebound elderly New Yorkers. Almost 500,000 of those come from our emergency meal distribution center. They're shelf-stable meals to have on hand. In just the last few weeks, we've packed and delivered over 200,000 emergency meals, and we have 300,000 more either food coming in or food in the warehouse to pack and get out for these older New Yorkers who are most vulnerable, most susceptible to COVID-19.
So your reach is the elderly, correct? And you haven't expanded past that, right?
It is the elderly, and typically, as I said, we're feeding 18,000 of those. We have expanded and are now including 22,000 other older New Yorkers who typically go to senior centers for their meals. And obviously centers are closed, so they need additional food as well. And we're working with the city, with the Department for the Aging, and senior centers in all 5 boroughs to help get meals where they need to be.
Have you had to expand your staff as well?
We have doubled our team up at the warehouse. We've had over, I'd say, close to 700 volunteers in the last couple of weeks, and over 1,200 inquiries about volunteering just last week alone. So our numbers are off the charts for us. We're also being really careful. So our team up at the warehouse has split themselves into like A team and B team, and they're working 1 week straight, team A, and then they're switching with team B so that we can try to isolate if anyone does get sick.
Okay, so let's get to this. How can people help you help others? So let's talk first financially. People can donate money, correct?
People can donate money. It is the most important thing for us right now. You can go to our website, citymeals.org. There's a big button to donate. There's also a big top bar in red that talks about all that we're doing in response to COVID-19. And I think what's really important for everyone to know, since our founding, we have stood by what we call our 100% rule, and we guarantee that 100% of every donation from the general public goes to meal preparation and delivery. And right now, that will go to emergency food to get out the door. And it can be, we love large donations, but small donations count. And every $8 or so delivers a meal.
$8, one meal.
One meal to the door.
That's wonderful. Now, as far as physically showing up,
yeah,
how does that work? Do people call and say, I would like to volunteer? What do they need to do? What do they need to have?
Yeah, so we need volunteers. We need volunteers to help deliver meals across the city. And she's going to kill me because I've been doing this for weeks now. Our director of volunteers is Vivian, and her email is vivienne@citymeals.org. And that's really the fastest way to get looped in. There is a volunteer button on our website too, but we've had such an influx of people wanting to volunteer that just go straight to Viv.
Sorry, Viv.
Sorry.
Sorry, Viv. So tell me about what you deliver. You deliver meals. Are they non-perishables?
Yeah.
Tell me how that works.
At this point, we are focused on non-perishable meals, boxes of shelf-stable food, whether it's a complete meal, or it could be tuna or salmon or canned chicken with quinoa, brown rice, a vegetable, applesauce, milk, crackers, low sugar cookies as a nice little treat, because we all could use a nice little treat right now. And it can be used immediately. It can sit on the cabinet for months, certainly weeks that we're going to be going through this. And we want to make sure there is enough food on hand for people who, can't get out even to get to the early hours that their grocery store might be having.
Now, tell me, if you could just give me an idea. I mean, you've been around a long time.
Yeah.
We've gone through 9/11. We've gone through Hurricane Sandy. What's the difference here? What are you sensing as far as like the need and how you are working with the people?
Yeah, I'll compare this to Hurricane Sandy. I had been executive director for about a year after Hurricane Sandy, and we mobilized quickly. We were able to get 64,000 emergency meals out in the weeks before and a couple of weeks after Hurricane Sandy with the help of over 800 volunteers. There was an end in sight. It was not the whole city. It was pockets of devastation and real devastation, and people, unable to get down flights of stairs in their buildings, and our volunteers climbing 27 stairs up. And it was incredible and made all of us really proud to do what we do. So as I said, in just the past few weeks, we've already delivered over 200,000 meals. We're preparing for another 300,000 on top of that. And it's all over the city, and it's scary for everyone. So everyone is questioning, should they walk outside to take a walk even for their daily exercise? Or should they go to the grocery store? And what does that mean for any one of us, let alone an older New Yorker who is most vulnerable, most susceptible to COVID-19. So this is far bigger than any emergency City Meals has ever faced. And we're facing it within a city and a country and really a world that is also facing the same things. So we're all feeling, sort of the isolation and stress that some of our meal recipients feel every day.
You mentioned the types of food. Can people donate food as well?
We've had great support from the restaurant community and some of our friends. We have hundreds of pounds of fish that's been delivered. We have someone who's making, 50 meals a day, and they've delivered cheese where it's needed. And if there are very large quantities, yes.
Right.
But smaller amounts for us aren't as helpful. And if you're looking at, doing 100,000 meals or packing 50,000 meals in a day or a week, those are really large quantities of food that are needed. We've had quite a few restaurant friends cooking and delivering. There's chefs at restaurants who are willing to go elsewhere and cook, to step into meal centers and help out there too.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today, and speaking to us and letting people know just one way that they can help. And I'm sure you'll get more calls. And again, we apologize to Vivian.
No, she's good. She wants the calls. And I thank you, Victoria, for helping us spread the word a little bit
Of
about
course,
what we're doing and
anytime,
what we need. Thank you.
anytime.